Hey guys, what is up? Kid here of Burn 1 with the Shadowverse Evolve channel. This time I'm here bringing you the top 4 lists that qualified at the San Gabriel, California Last Chance Qualifier. I know Dean normally does these, but since I was at this event and I'm familiar with some of the people that made top 4, I would go ahead and figured I'd talk about it here. So first off, congratulations to all 4 that were, or actually technically 3. I'm sorry, 4th place that unfortunately barely missed the cut. I know how bad that feels. It's happened to me before. But we'll just go through these lists and I'll give you my thoughts on them. So first off, Uma taking the entire thing. Bomis, I think is how you pronounce it. Uma's list here. So looking at it right now, it looks like overall a pretty standard list. The only really big thing that's sticking out to me outside of this is that this card right here, Mitikan Tannhauser, holy crap, it's a name. This card here I'm not a big fan of in the current meta. It does come up occasionally in a couple matches. I think the only matches this card ever comes up really is possibly Sword and then occasionally in Dragon. Otherwise I think the card is a bricky card you can add into your deck, but I mean, if you're anticipating a lot of dragons and a lot of swords, then I think this card's a decent, okay card, I would say, to include in your list. Outside of that, I think everything else in this list is really standard from everyone who's played Uma Musume so far. I think almost this is like basically the cookie cutter build that everyone runs, especially when they're starting off. But yeah, the Evo deck here, we have 6 carrots, only 1 special week Evo and 3 Agnes Tachyon Evos. I've recently enjoyed liking playing 2 special week Evos in my Evo deck for the mirror match, mostly because if you get put on second on turn 2, evoing it to a 3/3 is a little bit harder for your opponent to deal with instead of just playing Lamplet to remove it. But outside of that, it's a pretty standard list. You get a bunch of carrots, you get your 3 of Agnes Tachyons, and then a special week and anything else you really feel like is needed. Outside of that though, this is like the big pretty cookie cutter list, so congratulations on winning with this list. This is, you know, Uma Musume, as everyone knows, has been a solid and very powerful deck overall. Second here, place. I'm kind of surprised we're seeing Sword in second place here. I do think though Sword is pretty solid overall, I do think it is not like a list, or no, I don't want to say list, but it's a craft that is definitely like more of like a tier 2 deck in my opinion. I know some people have a different look on it. I just think the deck just doesn't do enough right now. Looking at this list though, one thing I noticed immediately here is that instead of playing 3 Latham, we're actually playing 3 Luminous Knights here and only 1 Latham. Pretty interesting choice. They're clearly going for more of an aggressive game plan, which is pretty nice for some players. I do like Luminous Knight, especially in this meta, because a lot of things just die straight out to Uma with Lamplet and make some noise. But one thing that's nice about Luminous Knight is that it does give you a little bit extra push. It makes your Bell Ringers go up to 1 attack, which is nice, and you know, protects the Luminous Knight also if they don't have a spell to remove it. And if they do remove it but leave the Bell Ringer up, the Bell Ringer becomes like a 2/2 ward. That's pretty annoying. So you do usually get some decent value overall running Luminous Knight and you know, being a little bit more aggressive in that sense. Looking at the rest of the list, it, for the most part, looks pretty standard overall. We're still running 2 Alberts here, 3 Alexander, because it's honestly one of the better removal followers that Sword has access to. We have a 2 of Tokaiteo, which has been a solid follower, as I'm sure a lot of Sword players have been enjoying a lot. We have here 2 of what's her name, Aurelia, Regal Saber. This card's really strong into a lot of things right now in general. For example, like Uma tends to, like when they start going off, they tend to have about 3 followers on board for their setup. So, you know, Aurelia Regal Saber comes out and is able to get the buff, to get the aura, and it feels very powerful. Even when you don't get the buff of it from it, it's still a rush to sell ward, which means you can target things like Vodka if they end up putting a Vodka out on 3 and using a spell to pump it to a 4/4. Aurelia is able to clear that, which is a pretty good answer to their turn 4 play, while also still being a ward on your opponent's turn that they have to they have to somewhat deal with, which is not too bad. But into other matchups like Dragon and things like that, and even against Forest, this is a very powerful card if they don't play around it. So seeing this as a 2 of is kind of not a big surprise, because it does play very well into the current meta, I think. And everything else looks pretty standard overall. We got one Brian here at the top end. This player is still going for the 3 of Leonidas into... I assume they have 2 Evos. Yeah, still going for the game plan of getting the amulet out, just to be like, hey, now the amulet's out, the game is basically over, because I'm going to start controlling the board if you can't remove this amulet and so forth. And we all know how that is. And then, the fact that Tokoteo adds some extra storm in the package is solid overall. I think outside of the big change here of having only 1 Latham and 3 Luminous Knight is the big change here. I do think Luminous Knight in a way is later in the game is definitely a better follower to be like top decking compared to Latham, but Latham for sure on 2 is probably the strongest thing that Sword can be doing right now when like trying to tempo out and going 1, 2, 3, 4 with their followers. Evo deck overall is pretty standard: 1 Bellringer, 2 of Maid Leader, 2 Floral, 1 what's his face? I'm forgetting his name now. Oh, Albert. 1 Advent Blader for the searching, 1 Tecoteo, and then obviously 2 Leonidas. So congratulations, Rockstar 365, and getting 2nd place and securing your World's invite. 3rd place here, Bellu. Surprising to me is this was my round 1 opponent that I beat. I saw their deck and I don't know. So my only understanding here is that I think if they ended up hitting a lot of dragons, is what I heard happen to them. It makes sense why they've made it this far. They're not only playing well, but they're playing into a matchup that their deck naturally has a very good matchup into, because you're no longer playing for that weird Silverbolt thing and not presenting followers and wards up and things like that. Instead, we're going back to the Rose Queen game plan. We do have a 1 of Silverbolt on the side just to like kind of close out games if we draw into it. And we're just doing that fairy package top end while being able to present very good tempo followers, such as Lily and Tia as well, which are very, very good. And then we have the added benefit of randomly having Roach in there to like close out random games or use as removal, which is really, really strong. Archer in this list, though, I think right now Archer isn't positioned super well in the meta, because I don't think there's a lot of decks really pooping out a bunch of followers that have low health that you can just start pinging off by using Archer and Elf Child May over and over again really quick. It still comes up occasionally where you can clear like 1 big thing and so forth, but I don't think Archer is like very powerful right now. I'm not sure how much work Archer did for them in their run, but honestly, if they played against mostly dragons, which is from my understanding, Archer probably didn't do the most work in the world. But outside of that, everything else is pretty solid. You have Noble Fairy, which I think is another very strong follower into Dragon, because not only does it present a ward, it gets rid of, like they slam Oguri Cap or something like that onto the board. They're 1 big follower for the turn, and you just remove it immediately. One thing that's nice about Noble Fairy and Archer is that they do combo together. So if you do play Noble Fairy, you combo into Noble Fairy, changing something to a fairy, then you can activate Archer's effect of removing that fairy token immediately, so you don't have to ever really worry about it. They played a 1 of Execution. I'm wondering how often that actually came up for them. I do know Force has a very, very good draw engine that it has going once it starts getting pieces into its hand. So that's very interesting. They only play it as a 1 of. Maybe it's just for like occasion if they play into a sword matchup or something like that. That's why they got it. But outside of that, everything else looks pretty standard. I guess notice 3 fairy circles. I guess with combination fairy circle with archers, pretty cute combo as well, though I don't think I've seen it come up that often whenever I've seen other players play Forestcraft like this. But the main game plan of the deck, obviously, as before, is we get to turn 8 after setting up all the fairies, turn them into Thorn Burst, and then we can burn our opponent out or control our opponent out, because suddenly you're drawing a bunch of cards to refill your hand, using them to combo off to set up your other pieces, and securing wins like that. Deck overall is pretty good. I think if you play into a lot of Uma and things like that, I think the deck might fall apart in that case. From what my experience was playing against this deck and how I experienced playing Rose Queen during testing as well, it felt just a little bit too slow to deal with like Uma and other things like that. But you know, if you get the God Swiss run of just hitting your best matchup for like 5 rounds in a row, then you know you're set, man. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than absolutely good. Obviously, this player is a very good player because they top 3'd, which is great to see. So congratulations to Bellu for top 3ing there. We'll take a really look quick at the Evo deck here. 2 Ancient Elf, 1 Archer, 3 Lily, 2 Rhinoceroches, 1 Tia, and only 1 San Suzuka. Interesting. I really like the fact that they're playing 3 of the Lily, though, because I do see that coming up more often. When I played in testing, a lot of my play partners all played 3 of the Evo instead of 2, and it was quite annoying because they can do a lot of plays where they bounce it back to their hand and then they just do it again to remove something off the board, which is incredibly annoying. 1 of Archer Evo in there. I don't know if, like, I'm very interested, Bellu, if you end up watching this video, let me know in the comments or something, like how often did this Evo Archer come up, because I don't even know if that's even very good value to keep in the Evo deck right now in the current meta, but maybe it is and I'm not seeing it. Maybe the fact that you're playing these fairies changes how strong Archer is on clearing boards where like your opponent has multiple like 4/4s and 5/5s on the board. So yeah, let me know if you do end up watching this video, and congratulations once again for top 3ing. Unfortunately, Pink Floyd's Dragon deck here. This is actually a local I end up playing a lot and have talked to occasionally about the game whenever we do run into each other. He's a very, very cool person. You know, unfortunately, he didn't make it. When I saw him in top 8, I was actually really excited for him to hopefully win it out because he is a pretty solid player all around. I've played him multiple times in championships. There was a couple championships where we played in the finals against each other. And every time I played against him, he's a very solid player all around, so I was really excited to see him in top 8. So Dragon deck, what can I say? For the most part, it's very standard overall. I think the big things you know, that stick out to me immediately is we have Dragon Tamer here, I believe is his name. Yeah, this card, I think, I don't know, I should have asked him. Well, I guess I couldn't have asked him because I didn't know his deck list at the time, but I'm very interested in knowing how important this card was towards the game plan for the deck, because nowadays you barely have any targets that actually work with Dragon Tamer. It is a draw discard to like help, I guess, fix hand, you know, set off Trail of Lights and things like that, which is very good, I guess, in some scenarios. But the Evo for it, and when it Evos, it's a 3/3, and I think having 3 attack is really important on like a 2-drop follower right now in this meta, just because it feels like all the followers have like 3 health or more nowadays, especially on the early turns. It's either they have no health or they have like 3 or more health. So interested to know, like, did that 3/3 come up? But the big thing, like I was alluding to earlier, is that you barely have any targets for the Evo to really you know, cash in on. All you really have is Dragon Warrior here, which is a Wormkin, along with the one of Shenlong. So I'm interested if, you know, this card came up enough with Shenlong in grave that like being able to cycle a Shenlong, it might be like worth playing the Dragon Tamer as a 2 of, because I think outside of that, you can just play in that spot. I feel like you either play some kind of other removal if you'd like, something to get rid of, you know, other people's huge Ogiri cap, things like that, you know, where basically a burn 5 spell isn't just enough. Like an execution to help up in the sword matchup, because I know sword matchup is really rough for Dragon to deal with if they don't like high roll it. And the other thing too, I don't know how common this is. You guys can let me know. I usually feel like Ogiri cap in Dragon is usually a 2 of in the deck, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's normally a 3 of. I can't really remember my own list off the top of my head right now. But I always feel like it's more of like a, you know, a 2 of in the list, and they use the extra slot basically to like add another tech card or something like that, or something lower on the curve. Like for example, my Dragon list that I was messing around with, instead of playing Tamer as the slot, it played 3 what's its face, Shapeshifting Mage, there we go, for a 2-drop 5/5 that occasionally, if I need to get rid of a standing Vodka or a standing Daiwa, I can Evo it and use the Sail plus Bane to remove anything I really need with that. And then, you know, late in the game, it's a very cheap 5/5 your opponent now has to deal with, where it lets you go a little bit wide if need be. I'm interested on, you know, how how impactful was the Dragon Tamer, honestly. Evo deck here, 1 Bell Ringer as always, Dragon Tamer 1 of makes sense, 2 Dragon Warriors, 2 Fortes, 1 Shenlong, 3 Carrots. So this is another thing about adding Dragon Tamer to your lists, is that you end up losing a carrot. So I think, especially when running 3 Ogiri caps, I think having a 4th carrot is pretty solid, because sometimes you are put into a position where you have to Ogiri cap and feed it once just to be able to rush to clear a board with the strike, deal 3 damage to everything. Because I know that comes up occasionally, but maybe it's not as important as I'm thinking it is, because I haven't played enough Dragon to be really like, okay, you have to have 4, or 3 is just enough. I imagine 3 must have been enough, because obviously top 4, pretty solid, pretty solid run for them overall. But that is it for the San Gabriel turnout. Congratulations to all 3 of you, and better luck next time, Pink Floyd, on making top 3 and getting your Worlds invite. I hope to see very good things from my locals here in Worlds. Besides that, that'll be Kit here signing off. See you guys in the next video.